All right, let's go into it. We have, like I said, a ton to cover. So let's just open it up with team by team previews. Jake is going to lead us off as always. We're going to start with Texas State, who obviously has a massive name at quarterback, which I'm sure Jake will talk about. So, Jake, tell us about the Bobcats in 2024.
Yeah, before I really even dive into the Bobcats, first things first, make sure you shop at our friends at No Rivals. I'm sure we're going to get to them a little bit
Great.
later, but
I mean, it's a good
awesome.
plug, but you kind of ruined my plan for it. But yeah, we'll throw it in what I'm thinking too. But go ahead. You now
All
tell us
right.
about Texas State.
We'll talk real Texas State football. I talked about USF last week, and particularly Alex Golish being one of the best young minds offensively in college football. Texas State, very similar situation. GJ Kinney is a name that I think is moving up in the young coaching ranks. I think that this is a guy that will be on a lot of people's lists for maybe a Power 4 coaching opportunity next year if things still go his way like it's supposed to this year. Texas State, man, a team who I think some of us our age can remember. This was a team that we played with in 2013 on NCAA 14. I think that was its first year at the FBS ranks. And this was a really poor program for its time in the FBS, its short stint in the FBS until last year. Made its first bowl game. GJ Kinney comes from Incarnate Word, and he brings in an electric offense. This year, some turnover transfer wise and at the quarterback position. If you guys remember TJ Finley last year, I think they went and got an upgrade in Jordan McLeod. If that name sounds familiar, he was Sunbelt Player of the Year. Not at Texas State, though. At James Madison, he leaves when Kurt Signetti leaves. Absolute home run transfer pickup for GJ Kinney. I think he's going to be a stud, and he'll probably be the Player of the Year again, unless maybe Aguilar from App State might give him a run for his money. Offensive line is primarily transfers. I think they're like Power 4 guys who step down a level. I think it's going to be a good plug. Learn the name, and I hope I get it right. Ismail Mahdi. Ismail Mahdi is their running back. What, did I get that right?
I think it was right. I'd give you credit for it.
Ismail Mahdi, 1,300-yard rusher last year, leads the league in rushing coming back this year. So not only are they going to be able to throw the ball, but I think this is going to be a nice 1-2 punch with McLeod and Mahdi running the football as well. I think he's going to have another big year. Joey Hobart, Cole Wilson, those are two guys at the receiver position that come back for McLeod this year to give him some support. Both of those two combined for over 1,500 yards last year. It's a theme. A lot of production on offense. Defensively, they bring back 8 starters, but we got to see more this year. The production is not there. They rank 116th in returning production, according to Bill Conley's SP Plus. Last year, they ranked 91st in total defense. I think they ranked 114th in total defensive points allowed. So even though they're bringing back a lot of familiarity, hopefully they just learned some lessons last year and they can take a step forward, because that's the only thing stopping this team from being a G5 dark horse for a playoff run or just your Sun Belt title contender is that defense. So hopefully with the continuity that can leap them forward this year in 2024.
Yeah, that's an interesting team to follow. I think the McLeod pickup was great, but I don't think enough people realize, because it was such a fast, but they got a quarterback. I'm blanking on the name, for like 2 weeks, and then he picked up a sexual assault charge, and they got rid of him.
Jaden DeLora. Is it DeLora?
Yes,
Arizona?
the Arizona. Yes,
yep.
The former Arizona starter. So I don't know what they're putting in the water down there, but they can recruit some damn quarterbacks. You go from TJ Finley to DeLora. Obviously, he ran into those issues, and now McLeod.
I think it's an upgrade from DeLora. I think
100%.
McLeod's a better choice. So
100%.
They kind of lucked out that way.
They did. It worked out in the long run for the Bobcats. I think they have a good chance at winning this conference. But all right, moving down the line, we're going to go to a JP clip. He's going to take us through one of the fan favorite programs back from 2007, the Appalachian State Mountaineers. JP, take us away.
The Appalachian State Mountaineers in 2024 are obviously at the top end of the Sun Belt Conference, but did you know they're also the odds-on favorite to win the darn thing? I can believe it. They're going to fight for a 12-team playoff spot. It would be their first berth in the playoff, in the college football playoff era. They also have more wins than any team in the college football playoff era to not make a playoff. I mean, this team has more wins than Boise State, Wisconsin, things of that nature. They're also got more wins than teams like Boise State, who you think would be a much better G5 program. This team has more wins than those guys in the last 10 or so years. This is another high-octane offense in Boone, North Carolina. This is going to be a ton of fun. You got Joey Aguilar running things and behind the reins of a great offense. Now Nate Noel leaves for Missouri. They have a couple running backs that I think they're high on. They're a little bit of younger guys though, and Kanye Roberts and Anderson Castle. These are guys are going to have to step in. The great news is that the offensive line is going to allow them to be really good. It's going to allow them to really get their footing and make the run game good. Then get over 4.5 yards a carry again, like they did a season ago, to balance that offense out and make sure Aguilar has a guy to give the football to rather than trying to air it out consistently. It's going to be another dangerous offense and really tough for Sunbelt teams to slow them down. The O-line is going to be really, really good. It was good a season ago. It could be better this year, depending on how you see things gel together a little bit more and get better and better. With most offensive lines, the longer they're together, the better they get. And that is definitely the hope there in Boone, North Carolina. The defense, again, will be solid, which is a ton of fun to talk about because they don't get a lot of the love that maybe the offense does, but it is a team that's very solid, right? It's not the biggest defense. They're not going to blow you away on paper with the size and numbers that they put up there, but they are a very good no-name bunch that wins a lot of games for this team. Guys to know, Miles Farmer at safety is going to be a big piece of all of this. And Nate Johnson and Caden Sullivan are a solid linebacking core. Like, to be honest with you, probably the best in the Sun Belt with these two guys. You can look a lot of places for App State. You're not going to find a lot of weaknesses. And I think that's a reason why they're the odds on favorite to win the Sun Belt in 2024. Hey, as a de facto fan, this would be my Sun Belt team. If I could pick one, I would love to see them win another Sun Belt title, but we'll get to that later in our predictions section. So that's the App State Mountaineers in 2024.
All right, there it is. JP with a good breakdown there. He is a little bit of a de facto fan. I think we all kind of have that little love for him from that 07 upset. Wouldn't you say, Reese? Like, it's just kind of a program that became known then. It stuck.
Yeah, it just sticks in your head. Like when we're coming of age, we were 8, 9, 10 years old with that team. Like that's just going to be burned in your head forever. Like that, you didn't know who App State was until that happened when you were our age, and they became a fan favorite for everybody.
Yeah, and the Cam Peoples like domination era, like God, those teams were so good, and they're always competitive. It's a good program. So there was a good breakdown from JP there. Any comments, Jake, on App State before I move down the line?
I think that he highlighted some guys on defense, but they bring back like 3 first-team all-conference guys on defense, and that is going to be their strength. But also Joey Aguilar is going to be really good. I think, like, as much as I love Texas State and how fun they will be on offense, the 12-team playoff and that G5 spot was made for teams like App State. Like, I think people would be happy to see App State in that spot. They got a really good defense. I'd have to go back and check their schedule again. I know they play Liberty at home, which is a fantastic game. That could be like your championship. Who gets the G5 spot? Possibly.
That would be awesome
to look at the schedule. So yeah, I'm excited about this team too. And I hope to see them in Texas State play as well. So
that would be fun. That maybe you just gave away your conference championship pick, or hopes at least. But
maybe
we'll get to that towards the end of the episode.
Maybe.
Moving down the line, we are going to Reese. Reese, you're going to cover the James Madison Dukes, who fought for this conference last year. Not legally, but they would have been in the mix. They hosted College Game Day. But tell us about the Dukes in 2024.
Well, the Dukes, obviously everybody knows last year, you already mentioned him, Jordan McLeod leaves, goes down to Texas State. This is a team that went 7-1 in conference last year. The only loss was to App State in overtime. So this was a very good football team, but they got a lot of new faces in there. Out with head coach Kurt Signetti, in with new head coach Bob Chesney, who comes in from the College of Holy Cross, which is an FCS program in the Patriot League. And over there, he went 44-21 and 28-4 in conference. So they got a guy who was a winner, who knows how to win. He had back-to-back 10-win seasons in 2021 and 2022. And then his only losing season was his first year there. He won under 500 by 1 game. He also brings in all new coordinators, offensive, defensive, special teams, and even a new strength and conditioning coach. So it's a total rehaul over there. Not sure how you feel about that as a fan, because you lose the head coach and the team that was so successful last year. So is everything new a good thing? Not sure. And like we also mentioned, no Jordan McLeod. So you bring in a quarterback from Washington by the name of Dylan Morris, who was their starter in 2021. But obviously when Michael Penix goes over there, you realize he's a pretty good quarterback. So he kind of rode the bench. But over there, he started, like I mentioned, and he was honorable mention in 2021. He threw for over 2,400 yards and 14 touchdowns. But the thing that was his problem was he threw for 12 interceptions. So they got to find a way to get him to be more comfortable in the pocket and take care of the ball. Big thing, too, is they got in a transfer in the backfield as well. Ayo Adai, who was a second teamer last year from North Texas. He played for 34 games over 3 years for them, had over 2,300 yards and 16 touchdowns. And last year alone, he had 7 games over 100 yards. So that's going to be a weapon they're going to have. We'll see what Bob Chesney can do with this guy, because you have that quarterback who had success at the Power 4 level. So what can they do with this running back they have now too? And not to mention defensively as well. This team was offensively and defensively the top 2 in the entire conference. So with the new coordinators, you got to find a way to be able to repeat that success, bring in guys back, especially with the transfer portal. How can you plug in guys that are going to be even better? And when you look at their conference or their schedule as well, win total sits at 8.5. You'd love to hear that if you're a James Madison fan, because it means you're going to have a winning season. But they have to start the year, they have a very, very winnable 3 out of 4 games. They go, they open up with Charlotte, and they go to Chapel Hill in week 3, but they have Gardner Webb week 2, and then Ball State week 4. And you got to imagine you come 3-1 out of that schedule, and then you got to find a way just to win games against the middle of your conference there, because the only top team they catch with the odds-on chance to win out of the East is App State. So everybody else, the odds-on favorites out of the West. So what can they do with the new guys they have in there and find a way to win some ball games?
Yeah, that's a good breakdown. I think the schedule does favor them. Those first 3 are very important. Like, you drop a couple of those, I think just the lingering effects of all the unknowns. You know, you lose your coach, you lose the best quarterback in the league to another team in the league, or so many question marks with a few teams in this conference. Jake, anything on the Dukes before we move down the list?
Yeah, I think they hit a home run with Bob Chesney. I think he won multiple 10-win seasons at Holy Cross. I don't think people understand how difficult that is. And FBS teams wanted to play Holy Cross, which that doesn't happen for a Patriot League team, but it's all up to, can his transfers plug and play right away? Morris is one of those guys, Adai on offense. And then defensively brings in 2 stud defensive ends from Long Island and USF. And then he also brought in an All-American linebacker at Holy Cross, comes over with him, and he's going to be another plug and play guy. I think he has the right guys. It's just, can they win? I don't know. It's the first 5 games are really easy, other than at North Carolina. Yeah. And I don't think North Carolina is going to be like they were last year anyways.
Yeah, right. No Drake May, so that's a different team.
Sure is. But all right, let's move down the line. Let's go to Troy. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Trojans, the reigning back-to-back Sun Belt champions. It's a little bit of a different conversation with this team now and the way they look. You lose your head coach at Tulane and John Summerall. You bring in a bigger name than what you expect. You bring in Jared Parker, the offensive coordinator from Notre Dame. He's never been a head coach before. Technically, he does have a record under his belt. He was the interim head coach at Purdue 8 years ago, and he was 0-6 in that time frame. So if you want to count that, sure, but I'm sure he's a much different and better coach now. This is what I was talking about earlier. When you look at teams that have had success recently within the G5, there are so many question marks for this team coming back as a reigning champion. It's almost diabolical for the league. Like, they don't have a quarterback. They don't have a running back. They lose their head coach. They lose a bunch of guys on the offensive line. They lose a bunch of defensive starters. Like, it is a brand new Troy team when they've been rolling teams in this conference for the last 2 years. Last year, they went 11-3, 7-1 in the conference, win it again. And they've always been competitive. Even in that Kansas State game last year where they got drubbed on the scoreboard at the end of the game, they were in that game for the most part, and then it just kind of got away from them. Looking at them this year, we don't often talk about how good Gunnar Watson was at quarterback, because Troy's not one that's always in the spotlight, but he was beyond solid for this program. You lose him, and then you're going to lose Carmani Vidal to the NFL, which is unfortunate because he was the best rusher in the league, offensive player of the year in the Sun Belt last year. That was just on the offensive side, so don't think I'm taking Jordan McLeod's spotlight, just the offensive player of the year. Vidal was so good, man. This team, I don't know how to better outlay it than, like, it was probably the most silent run of a G5 program just going to work in their conference. And now they have all these question marks. Like, your entire team is a question mark now. And I think Troy fans, if you're out there and you're still present, you're probably wondering the same thing as us. Going to their second point, for this year, you lose 3 out of your 5 offensive linemen who were very successful. I mean, that was a good offensive line. There's a reason Vidal had the success that he did. It was a lot of credit to them. So you have to replace guys on there, and replacing guys in the trenches when you have other teams, which we'll talk about later, that dominate the trenches. is another question mark. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you have big shoes to fill. You only gave up 17 points a game last year, just over 300 yards per game. And you bring in a couple of transfers. You bring in Cincinnati edge Jamal Williams, who's a pretty good player. He played in 10 games for them last year in the Big 12. And then you bring in a Gardner Webb linebacker and Brendan Jackson, who had 71 total tackles and 11 and a half tackles for loss. So you got a couple of names coming in, but you just don't know. With the first-year coach, first-year defensive coordinator, like, do they fit the scheme? So I don't think they're going to repeat and run the three-peat back for Troy in 2024. I really just don't see it. Jake?
Yeah, I don't love the hire, but it reminds me about like the Louisiana situation, replacing Billy Napier. How are you going to replace John Summerall, which you had two of the best years in your entire program's history? Louisiana's still recovering from it. I see kind of a regression with Troy in a similar situation. I'm looking here, and at least according to Athlon, 0 returning starters on defense. That was a defense that was really good last year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy looking at it. And yeah, Gunnar Watson was a name that I think at least the college football diehards were pretty familiar with too.
Right.
So they're replacing a lot. And I don't know. I'm not a big Gerard Parker fan. I didn't think he was great at Notre Dame either.
Yeah, I believe it's Jared, right?
I don't know. I mean,
I think they would have to throw an extra A in. I bounced back and forth for that for like 3 hours breaking it down. I'm going to go with Jared because there's not that A in at the end.
Why do you name if it's Jared? Why are you naming him with a G?
I went on a full-blown tangent yesterday doing this. I was just like, why do they like Jamal Williams, who I talked about, that Cincinnati transfer? It's JAH-MAL. Come on. Just do Jamal. Like, come on.
You can throw an extra A in there, but like, don't get crazy.
Put a dash in for fun, just to be different. But going back to their schedule quickly, they do go play at Memphis, and then they go play in Kinnick in Iowa City.
Yeah.
So it's not really the easiest path either for your first-year head coach.
And you said it. You said it too. Like, it kind of went under the radar that they just ran through the Sun Belt after the James Madison loss, and I think it's because of that. They started off 1-2. They had that Kansas State loss. They lost to James Madison at home, and then they quietly won 10. Was it 9 in a row? 10 in a row?
8, 9 in a row.
Just ran through the Sun Belt, but definitely not the same situation this year, I don't think.
We'll see how it turns out for them. But all right, going back to the top of the list, Jake is up again, and he is going to take us through the Georgia State Panthers. Jake, tell us about this team in 2024 and what they're going to look like.
Yeah, if you guys remember last year when Sean Lewis leaves Kent State and they just got murderer's row from the transfer portal, and you saw a ton of guys leave. Similar situation for Georgia State. I think they're in a better situation, and I'll explain that. But 31 or 36 guys transferred out, 31 new guys transfer in. Sean Elliott leaves for, I think it was the tight ends coach at South Carolina. Just a bizarre move, but it's not really that surprising because we've seen that now with a lot of other group of 5 coaches, head coaches. And I'll cover one of those again later as a hint. But Del McGee steps in as the new head coach in the middle of spring after Elliott leaves. He was a running backs coach at Georgia for 8 years. I think it's a good hire. I mean, he worked under Kirby Smart for a long time, has a lot of trust, knows the state, can recruit there. I think with some time, McGee is going to be a good hire for them. Like I said before, you're basically replacing 60 new guys with your 30 guys transferring in, your 36 guys transferring out. Completely different team this year. Who's going to be the quarterback for them? They're looking at Zach Gibson. He was a guy who started at Akron a couple of years ago, went to Georgia Tech last year, lost the job there, obviously, to Haynes King, and now he's looking to stay within the state and start over at Georgia State. Marcus Carroll, some of you guys may not know that name, rushed for 1,300 yards last year. He's going to probably be the starting running back for Missouri this year. Absolute stud, just one of those guys that departed post in the wintertime, actually, as well. Didn't play in the bowl game. Coastal Carolina transfer CJ Beasley, Freddie Brock, another guy who played in the bowl game after Carroll left. Those are going to be 2 of the guys at running back, I think, that are going to have a lot of impact on this football team. I think, obviously, McGee's a former running backs coach. Those guys are going to be super important, I think, in this offense in 2024. They ranked 116th in total defense last year. So maybe this departing of a ton of new faces is going to maybe help, because I don't know if it can really get that worse. Defensively, they were terrible last year. I think they lost 5 straight games to end the year. They go in the portal. They get Bishop Thomas, the defensive tackle out of Colorado. If you guys watch that HBO show, he was kind of one of the main characters. I think he's got some talent. I think he'd be really good, but it's just a matter of, can he be coachable? Can he play in this system? And then Gavin Pringle is one guy that they did keep on that roster this year. He's going to be an all-conference cornerback. So at least they have something to build off of defensively. That's really what I have for Georgia State. A lot of Power 4 transfers in those 36 transfers. No playing experience. I looked them all up and down the roster. Not a ton of playing experience, so I can't really speak production-wise for Georgia State this year. I like the move with McGee. I think it's definitely, you guys saw what Kent State was last year, one of the worst teams in college football. I don't think they're the worst team in the conference, but they're pretty damn close.
Yeah, and it stinks because you get if you get that production back, you do draw a couple of good Power 4 opponents to have. Like you get Vanderbilt and you get I don't want to say bad because I was high on them last year. They make a bowl game when they weren't expected to, but a mediocre, I guess, Georgia Tech team on the road.
Right.
Teams would thirst for that. Like that's the Power 4 opponents you get. Like take advantage of it. But there's so many question marks around this team too. So I think you nailed it. All right, moving down the line, we're going to go back to a JP preview. Another clip here, and this one's going to go on Louisiana Monroe. I don't know if he'll mention it in the clip. I haven't gotten to watch it. It's a surprise to you guys as it is to me.
Speaking of worst teams in the conference.
Yes, speaking of worst teams in the country. Statistically, the worst team in the country and probably one of the worst programs overall in college football. But JP, take us through the Warhawks in 2024. Little hiccup there. Reese, we back? Sorry, no, it's a little signal hiccup there.
I don't know.
I don't
know what happened.
Good.
I have no idea what happened.
No, it's all right. Live show, man. Live television.
Yeah, we're good. State Mountaineers in 2024 are obviously the ULM Warhawks. This is, again, I just want to reiterate this. I've said it in other episodes and things. This is one of the tougher, if not the toughest job in FBS football. It's a program with not a lot of money around it. There's not a lot of money flowing into it, not a ton of support. But what I can tell you is I feel like they had a good hire here with Bryant Vincent this year. What I cannot tell you is that this team is ready to win games right now. It's a massive, massive, massive turnover. 1 starter returns on the offense, about 3 or 4 on the defensive side of things. I'm not saying that's a great thing, but when your 1 starter on the offensive returns was an all Sun Belt guy on the offensive line, anytime you can get an all Sun Belt guy or an all conference guy on the offensive line, you're 100% going to take it. When you look at this program, and we got a chance to visit there not too long ago, you can kind of see why it's not, beloved in some situations and why there's, hesitancy to drop any money into it. But this is a program that would love, to have some winning ways. They've had 1 bowl game since in the history of the program. I think 2012 or 14 or so was that year. They just need a little bit of love. So it's going to come down to the defense getting a lot better. It's going to come down to the offense not being one of the worst in the FBS. They have 2 guys at quarterback that they're going to work off of here. You might remember these names, for instance, Hunter Herring, and then General Booty comes in as well, an Oklahoma transfer. He lands here. Not sure who will be your guy in this one. I would take the lean towards Hunter Herring in this situation. But again, this is going to be kind of something that's open along the way. When you're battling to get anywhere with a win total of 2.5, you're kind of open to anything at this point. Again, they are excited about the hire. This is one of the tougher jobs in FBS. But you're going to need to find playmakers for Herring. You're going to need to find guys to make plays on the defensive side as well. You can't just be a pushover in some spots like they feel like they have been in the last couple of years for sure. So talking ULM is always, you have to kind of preface with what the program expectations are and kind of where things are. Again, Bryant Vincent seems like a right hire for them. That's how they feel. But it is a little bit different when you talk about this program versus the James Madison or versus a Marshall or something like that. So same conference, not an even playing field, but I'd love to see this program up and running here in the not too distant future. Give it a couple years and let's see what happens. I would love to see this be a program that kind of takes flight and finds its identity, whether that's an offensive team or a defensive team that gets a ton of stops. But let's wait a couple years to kind of really judge Bryant Vincent and the job he's done at ULM.
All right, there's ULM in 2024. It's a bad team. I think every list from every expert out there will tell you that there's not very many, if any, teams that are beneath them, but JP is also supposed to rebuild them. I can't believe he didn't
Yeah.
mention that, but that's his
Yeah.
rebuild team. So good luck, Chuck, because that's a job.
I need like a 10-minute YouTube documentary just on like the head coaching job at ULM. Just like it's got to be. We've debated it before. Like Kent State's again up there, Akron's probably up there, but it's got to be the toughest coaching job in Division I FBS level football. I think
100%.
No support. You're dead last on the totem pole with Louisiana FBS football teams. I mean, we've been there. It is a graveyard with the stadium capacity. Somebody said, I saw it on Twitter the other day, with the college football 25 toughest stadiums to play.
Yeah.
And then this guy did a G5 ranking. And somebody in the comments said, what about ULM? And he was like, he's like, I'm dead serious just for the wrong reasons. He's like, it's like Nap City. It's hard to get up when nobody's there.
You don't even want to wake up. You don't even want to show up to the field.
Down.
Dude, it is very tall on one side. If you've never seen it, look at a picture of it. It's like ridiculously skyscraper high on one side, and then it's just like a regular high school football stadium on the opposite side.
It's like from the 30 to the 30, but it's 3 stories high. What are we doing?
Have they changed the rebrand like throughout the entire stadium? Because I remember when we went down there 3 or 4 years ago, they still had the old logo.
Yep.
Maybe on the field too, like it's at midfield, but they wear obviously these new uniforms, which again, I'm a big fan of, but we got to update the whole facility here, not just the uniforms.
I don't know if they did, but they need to if they haven't. But like we walked around this campus. Let me be very clear. Like this is not a place where money is just flowing in. I'll tell you that much. Like I don't know
how rough that basketball court was.
Yeah, they had like
that basketball arena was rough. That guy was in there.
It was kind of cool.
We just walk in there.
I like that arena. It was pretty gritty, but the football stadium, like I've seen nicer ones from high schools. I mean, there's just no money down there. The drive-through margaritas aren't supplying enough for the school to advance.
I still need an explanation why Tech and Monroe are not playing every single year for a rivalry game.
That's a
somebody
fair question.
Got to give me an explanation there.
I don't know. I think they don't want to hurt each other when it comes to fandoms or their very small audience. Well, we got to make that happen. We should bring that up. A gigantic
petition
marching band member will be the trophy because we made it happen. But they interstate there's so much you could do. But all right, there's ULM in 2024. Moving down the list, we're going back to Reese. Reese is going to take us through Coastal Carolina. Reese, your rebuild team. I'm sure you're going to mention it, but take us through the Chants in 2024.
Yeah, I caught some flack for this being my rebuild team, even though they've been pretty good in the past. But this is a team last year, a little bit disappointing from what they were expected. 8-5 overall. They went 3rd in the East, 5-3 in conference, and they were very, very average last year in conference. They were only they're in the middle, but they were top 3 defensively, only giving up 23 points a game. Head coach Tim Beck's entering his 2nd season there. This is a guy, Parks Yilbreg, recognizes his name. He's had a lot of experience elsewhere. He's been a running backs coach in Nebraska. He was the co-offensive coordinator at Ohio State and the offensive coordinator at Texas and NC State. So it's a guy who has experience with high-powered offenses. So what's he going to be able to do this year? He lost Grayson McCall last year after week 7, unfortunate injury during an Arkansas State game. But now in comes their new quarterback, Noah Kim from Michigan State. Guy started in 5 games last year, went 2-3. His only 2 wins were against Central Michigan and Richmond. But those other 3 games, he faced tough defenses. He went against Iowa, Maryland, and Washington. So the guy has competed against tougher defenses that he's probably going to see this year in this entire conference. So what is he going to be able to do with this guy to kind of unleash his potential? And the big issue, too, is that offensive line with the run game was just not what it needed to be last year. Their top 2 backs are back this year, but Braden Bennett only had 91 carries last year for 407 yards with 5 touchdowns. And number 2 guy was CJ Beasley, who had 68 carries for 262 yards. That's not the kind of numbers or production you need from your backfield, especially if you're trying to be high-powered and productive in this offense, in this conference as well. And then the wide receiver, Jared Brown, had 58 receptions and 740 yards. And he's got to fill in for their top receiver, Sam Pickney, who had 72 receptions for 1,000 yards last year. So, new faces with the offense. What are they able to do with that? And then when you dive into their schedule, too, they get a team that we talked about at the beginning of the year with Jacksonville State at home. Or on the road, pardon me. Then they get William Mary and then Temples and then Virginia at home. So two winnable games in there, you'd say. The Jacksonville State, I think, is a little tougher than people think. And Virginia, they were down last year. A couple years ago, they were a great program. So we'll see kind of where they're at this year. But when you dive into the conference play, they catch Louisiana and App State at home and only go on the road to JMU. So they have that in favor for them. Their win total's at 6.5. You can get the under 6.5 for minus money. I'm not really sure what to think about this team. I think if you're talking ceiling, I think it's 8. I really don't see them getting that high. I don't know if you have many wins where they're just, you can definitively say they're the better team on the field every single time. So I think 6 is a good number to see where it's at. Like I said, I don't think they get much above it. I think 7's a comfortable bet for them.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think you're going to find a lot of people learning about this team within the video game coming up here and within a month now. Leaving it out all in the teal field, like it's just a good brand. I really hope they stay relevant because, like, I don't know about you guys, but that 2020 season feels like a movie, dude. Like looking back on it, that 2020 Coastal team, it literally feels like a fever dream thinking about it.
I think the fan base is still living in that fever dream. I think that's the problem with some of these schools. They're still living off the expectations of their greatest coach in program history. Like Chadwell is gone now. I think Coastal's more like a 6 or 7 win team more than they are just dominating the Sun Belt like they did. So it's got to move back the expectations, I think, if you're a Coastal Carolina fan.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good way to go. But all right, there's Coastal in 2024. Let's move down the list. It's back to me. I'm going to talk about, I'm going to say Louisiana Lafayette. I refuse to sit there and talk University of Louisiana. There's like Fort La Tech. Like, I'm not disrespecting those programs. You're ULL. You're the Raging Cajuns. You always will be. But Louisiana in 2024, they're kind of looking to still reignite that spark they got from Billy Napier. They really are. I mean, they put back-to-back seasons of 6 and 7 ball together. They lose their bowl game last year, and we'll talk about kind of the fashion they lost games last year and what they need to change to take another step forward back to those 10-win seasons that they so long thirst for. But looking at this team, you bring in a new defensive coordinator in Jim Salgado. He has NFL experience, which always helps, and he formerly coached at Michigan State before he went to the NFL. When he was in the NFL, he was with the Commanders. Now he lands at Louisiana Lafayette. You're trying to, I don't want to say replace, because you do have guys with experience there, but you're trying to reignite a running game within the Sun Belt that was very dominant. Like they led the Sun Belt in rushing when it came to yards per carry. It was at 4.9 yards per carry. So let's say 5, and you return 4 offensive linemen from the line that did that. That's a really good part. They do return a good amount of production on both sides of the ball. However, they only won 6 games. So what's the step? Like, there's always that missing piece with this team. What is it? Well, they lost 5 games by 1 score or less. That's where it is. And it only feels fitting with this logo behind me and this big logo to be talking about a team that loses 1-score games, because I, of all people, know how that feels. So you're very close to taking a big step forward. And when you're in a program like Louisiana, you're just looking for 1, 2, even 3 more wins. All of a sudden, you're in that 8-9 win range, and you're going to find yourself at the top of your conference competing for a G5 playoff spot if you have the right schedule in mind and wins on that schedule. Talking about that schedule, you don't get a ton of tough opponents. You get Tulane at home, which could make a lot of noise for you later in the year, and then you go on the road and play at Wake Forest. Their conference schedule, though, not the easiest path. You get Coastal on the road and Texas State back-to-back weeks. You draw the App State, and you got South Alabama and the question mark in Troy. That could really, I mean, that's your make or break. Those back-to-back weeks on the road with Coastal and Texas State are kind of what's going to lay this season out for this team. But you can make some noise early in the year with a competitive game against Tulane, who has all the rave going for them once again. Their defense returns a good amount of production, like I said, as their offense does. They return all Sun Belt honorable mention KC Asai at linebacker. He was their leading tackler last year. He should be a big piece for that defense this year. And if you're looking at the offensive side of the ball, you're replacing a 1-2 punch that was very dual threat last year, which made up that running game. But you're doing it with a guy who played the year before, played in 10 games, got injured, missed all of last season. So he's played in this uniform before, in this stadium before, and he should fit, I don't want to say well, but decently well. And that's Ben Woodridge, by the way. That's who's doing that. He's going to be okay. I think this team's going to be kind of where they are at right now. But if you get those one-score games in your favor, like I said, you get 2 or 3 more of those, all of a sudden you find yourself in a completely different spot. So it's kind of a question mark on whether or not it'll work, but you got a new defensive look, and they kind of needed that too. That's Louisiana in 2024. Should be a decent team, but it's one of the more fun brands. I feel like I could say that would be cool to be good, but they get a good crowd down there. They have a good fan base. So I hope they do have a successful year. Any comments? I don't think you guys will have any comments on Louisiana. They're just kind of the middle of the pack team within this conference, but any Louisiana thoughts before I move on?
I think they just need to. I think you kind of highlighted it, Parks. They got to get better at the running game, like go back to the Napier style.
Ground and pound, man.
And defensively, they got to be better, and I think they can do that. You mentioned the games. They beat Texas State, but they lost to Arkansas State and Southern Miss last year.
I know it.
Just kind of the bizarreness of this football team, who could be a dark horse if they put it together.
Right. And I was thinking about this. I think these G5 conferences, like more looking into them, they kind of beat up on each other and make themselves bowl eligible. Like you're like, oh, they made a bowl, but they lost.
They 10 teams or 10 Sun Belt teams made a bowl game last year.
Yeah, that's what happens when you keep beating each other when you're not supposed to. Yeah, the Fun Belt, baby. But all right, that's Louisiana in 2024. Moving back up the list, going back to Schaefer. Talk Marshall, one of my, I don't want to say favorite brands because I feel like I always say that, but a good green. The Thundering Herd. Let's talk on the Thundering Herd in 2024. Tell us about them.
Yeah, for the biggest question mark or things that need to be improved on for this Marshall football team in 2024, it's got to be the offense. They went out and made a change. Offensive coordinator Seth Daggy comes in. 4 total starters return on the entire football team. They're kind of clean and slate. I think it's a fresh start for a team that can take that next step as possibly another dark horse in the Sun Belt Conference. The quarterback competition, if you need to know about this offense, it's a 3-man race. It's Mitch Griffiths. If we remember him, he was a Wake Forest guy. I think he got a couple of starts over there. It's Cole Pennington. Yes, that is the son of Chad Pennington. And Braylon Braxton comes over from Tulsa, started a few games there. Not a super talented room, but by August, I think you want to find your guy and know who's starting week 1 if your new offensive coordinator, Seth Daggy. 30 transfers come in. Like I said, they completely cleaned house. They're starting new. Because this was a team last year that started off really well and landslided at the end because they couldn't click on offense. Running back Jordan Houston from NC State comes in. In 2022, he was probably their second back. He had 550 yards, had an injury last year, really wasn't playing much for them, but has a lot of production from that side of the view. Wide receiver Elijah Metcalf comes over from Middle Tennessee State. He had 660 yards last year. He was like their number 2 option. He will be the number 1 receiver for them. Big upgrade for them. I like that pickup. So offensively, trying to make some moves there. Defensively, I don't think you need to change much at all, especially with personnel. I think they'll be good on that side of the ball. This has got to be a team, though, that if the offense clicks, if they even get to, 25 points a game next year, I think that this is a team in Marshall who could win 7 or 8 games. So that's really what I have on Marshall. I'd have to go back and check their schedule. I don't love diving into schedules. First 4 games, though, starts with Stony Brook, at Virginia Tech, at Ohio State, in Western Michigan. That is your non-conference. So tough non-con. At Virginia Tech, at Ohio State is that's tough sledding.
Yeah, that's not what you want to see as a fan. Like you're talking about 2 of, I don't know if they threw Lane Stadium in college football 25, top 25 stadiums. I can't remember, but I know the shoe's in there, and that might be like a G5 nightmare when you talk about road games. So that's tough. But all right, that was a good one. We're going to move down the list. We're going back to a JP clip. We're going to stay on the side of the screen this time because this one runs a little long. But JP is going to tell us about Arkansas State this year, and we'll let him talk about the Red Wolves.
Arkansas State Red Wolves in 2024. Hopefully, we'll take another step forward under Butch Jones, a team that went 6-6 last year in the regular season and a 6-7 record after a loss to Northern Illinois in their bowl game. When you look at Arkansas State, there are a couple things that you think of. I think of the 2010 and 19-ish time when this program was winning Sun Belt titles. They were the top of the conference. 2020 kind of hit. They kind of had a little bit of a skid. They haven't been in their winning ways in a little bit. Butch Jones is trying to get that back here in his 3rd year. Butch Jones has a high-flying offense. I think we've understood that at Arkansas State, especially last year. You look at a guy and Jalen Rayner, who's the quarterback. He was Sun Belt freshman of the year a season ago, a quarterback for the Red Wolves. He has great weapons around him, right? 10 returning starters on the offense that come back. One of the starters that they do not bring back is an offensive lineman. So there's something we can plug and play a guy into that spot, and the rest of the chemistry will really help them kind of thrive on things. They're averaging around 27 points a game. They're a team that is going to try to get up and down the field and score. When they got to 31 points last year, they were 6-0. When they were held at 21 or less, they were 0-7. So it kind of tells you where they were. Like defensively, they weren't great. They were really good offensively. So the offense had to really carry the weight. And I don't see that changing too much in 2024. They're going to have the offense carry this team just about everywhere you want. Talented wide receiver room. And honestly, I'm really excited to talk about this one. Courtney Jackson, Corey Rucker, and Malik Hornsby, a converted quarterback, will now play receiver for the Red Wolves. It's a high-flying team. They've got a ton of great stats, ton of big plays. Their ability to throw the football downfield is massive. And if Rayner can continually throw the football well without a ton of turnovers, there's only, so far, this team can go a long ways. I mean, they can really work to their success, especially in the West, where the Sun Belt West feels like it's a little less talented than the Sun Belt East this season. You have one big challenger in Texas State, but that isn't to say you couldn't get them. You get them a little earlier in the year. I think October 12th, you get them at Texas State. So there are things that you can do to really help yourself as Arkansas State to win a football game there and maybe even win the Sun Belt West. Another thing with that, we're going back to the defense. They're relying on the transfers to really help themselves up. There's no guarantee on these ones. These aren't guys that are transferring in that are completely proven or completely ready to roll. It's going to depend, and it's going to take a lot more than just transfers to shore things up. Even if you bring back 6 or 7 on the defense, like they might be, you're going to need improvement all over the place. You just can't give up the amount of points they did a season ago. Looking at the schedule here, Central Arkansas, Tulsa, Michigan, Iowa State to start. Tulsa, I think, will be a closer game than you might think, even though Tulsa's going to be down. So let's just give them 2-2 there. South Al, Texas State, Southern Miss, Troy, Louisiana, Georgia State, ULM, Old Dominion. I see 7 wins here. Their current win total right now is at 5.5. I got that a tick too low. I'd put it at 6.5 if I were in Vegas. So I would bet on the over and Arkansas State getting back to a bowl game. Again, offense is going to win this team games. The defense gets better and better. It might win them a Sun Belt West championship in 2024. That's Arkansas State Red Wolves in 2024.
Yeah, I think that's a fair breakdown there, but I almost lost track midway through because we got this one that pops through. And I assume this is somebody knows this man, but I mean, I'm going to go with
Would
no.
they? With like the third string guys, or like who? What are we talking here?
Is it
I
the third
doubt
stringers
it.
coming after they're down by 60?
Yeah,
Quinn Ewers throwing with his left arm. I'm not.
I
so
still don't.
sure.
I'm still probably taking Texas on the spread there.
With Arkansas
But
State.
we might have to,
Yeah.
we'll have to mention Arkansas State later because we got some insider info from JP. So we'll have to talk about them later. And maybe JP thinks that game would be more competitive. I'm not going to put that in him. He'll scream at me when he gets back. But
Yeah.
all right, that was Arkansas State. Let's keep the line moving. We are going back to Reese. Reese is going to talk about Southern Miss. Reese, tell us about the Golden Eagles in 2024 and what we can expect from them.
Well, unlike the other two teams I've covered so far, this team just struggled last year. They were 3-9 overall, second to last in the West. The only team worse than them was ULM, who we all talked about before. The reason why they struggled, they gave up 420 yards a game and 36 points a game. And right now, Vegas isn't doing too kind to them. Their over-under sitting at 4.5. You can get the under for minus money. And then their schedule really doesn't do them any favors. To open up the year, they open up on the road at Kentucky. Then they get a winnable game at home against Southeast Louisiana. Then they catch USF, and then at week 4 again, they're a coastal team. They catch Jacksonville State, who we talked about before, kind of a sleeper team that people might be higher on. And then week 5 to open up a conference, they open up with Louisiana, Lafayette at home. So to open up the year, it's tough sledding if they can't get the guys in to get the adjustments they need. It's going to be a little bit tougher to go.
Got to take over the reins from Southern Miss here. Oh, Reese, we found you. You're back.
What happened?
I think that only cut out for you, Jake. You never cut out for me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to start
professional
that.
off in the middle of his roll.
These guys are professional here. What are we doing?
Yeah, I'm production wise. I was just making sure we were all good.
Oh well, either way. And then to end the year, this is who they get to end of the year. They get Texas State, South Alabama, and Troy. So they better find a way to get wins in the middle of the year, because if they can't, they're sure not going to find them at the end of the year. If they don't find them in the middle, I think that over is dead by mid-November. Head coach Will Hall enters his third season. He's got a 13-24 record overall. We'll see what he did with transfers this year. He brought in 17 guys all over the field. So who knows? Maybe this group can be a spark to get something going. But I think it's management expectation as well too. If you can get yourself to 5, maybe you can find yourself a way to sneak into 6. Maybe play spoiler at the end of the year, because you talked about Lafayette last year, who lost to this team, but they beat a good Texas State team or whoever they beat. So who knows? And then also, some of you recognize this name. Tate Rodemaker is coming in to compete for the quarterback spot at this school too. So they brought in a guy who's got some Power 4 experience at Florida State University. So we'll see what they have dialed up for this year for this team.
All right, I love that. Even though you got cut off mid sentence by Jake, and you were rolling too. I mean, I had no cuts, no nothing.
I apologize. He
recovery
completely cut out for me, and I was like, "Oh, I might have to take the reins."
Well, like I also went off the big
up
screen
some
and went back to this, so I thought something did happen.
I did do that. I did that on purpose.
You did that.
You froze for me.
Okay.
Sorry
He's
about
cutting
that.
you off. But no, that was good, Reese. All right, we're gonna move down.
Yeah, we're here.
I got to talk about Old Dominion, and looking at Old Dominion last year. This team, I want to refer to them as the Plaxico Burress team of college football, because man, oh man, did they shoot themselves in the foot several times last year. You're looking at a team that 11 of their 13 games was decided by one score or less. Of course, I'm talking about them. And 5 of those games resulted in losses. You post a 6-7 year, you get beat in a bowl game. How did they get beat in the bowl game? How did they Plaxico Burress themselves? Well, they were up 35-14 going into the fourth quarter and lost 38-35. So you didn't really have the best end to your year. However, you got a chance to make a little bit of noise this year. I don't want to say within this conference, because they're going to be middle of the pack, but they're bringing back some talent. You return your starting quarterback from last year in Grant Wilson, so you have experience there. But the most important piece for this team to turn this around and have their first winning season since 2016 is line play. They are terrible on both sides of the trenches. Their offensive line was the worst in Power 5 football, and they gave up 62 sacks. That's 5 sacks a game. You can't win football games doing that consistently, and they still found a way to win 6. So you know you got something within the room. And then on the defensive side of the ball, this would be my other main point when it comes to the trenches. You had a league. How do you say this? You lost the league. You had the lowest grade in the league. You only had 19 sacks on the defensive side of the ball.
There you go.
And that doesn't turn around. You give up 62 and you only get 19. That's not the split you're looking for from the trenches, and you're not going to find success long-standing wise within a conference like the Sun Belt. If they stop blowing leads and they can improve the offensive and defensive lines, they'll have a chance. They bring back some pretty good players on that defense, not on the line. They bring back All-American Jason Henderson, who led the FBS in tackles the past 2 seasons. He posted 170 tackles last year. So you got some absolute ballers on this team that can make some noise within the conference. I just don't know when it comes down to their schedule if there's 7 wins here. I really don't, because you draw South Carolina week 1, then you draw Virginia Tech in week 3. But other than that, I mean, nothing really stands out. Like at Bowling Green, that's nothing to blink at if you're Old Dominion. I think that can be a competitive game, and it's probably a 50-50 split on who could take that one. But Old Dominion also competes in games that you wouldn't expect them to. Like last year or 2 years ago, they find themselves in a dogfight with. It was last year at Wake Forest. They lose by 3 against Wake Forest. They were in that game for a long time in Lane Stadium to open the year. So they have some grit within this program that makes me think that one point they will get there. But I just don't know until I see the offensive line play this year if I can say it's going to be now. So that's what I got on Old Dominion in 2024. I don't think that they're going to be towards the top of this conference, not with the star power that App State has and Texas State has. I think they're just going to looking to take a step forward in the right direction leading into 2025. But all right, that's Old Dominion. Any comments on Old Dominion from the group? Jake, did I miss anything? Any transfers out there? You always got those in front of you.
No, I like the Wilson kid at quarterback, but like you said, you can't give up 62 sacks.
My God.
That's not gonna win games.
Tough.
And I don't
Guys not
they're such a confusing team, like with all those 1 scores, and I don't know, they bring back guys. I'm not very high on this team. I don't think they're gonna win a lot of games this year. I'd take their under.
Okay. And what was that number at? I didn't have that down. Is it 5?
I heard 4.5 or 5.
Looking.
And this is a team who that tells you all you need to know. They bring back 6 starters, I think, on both sides, offense and defense.
Yep.
And they won 6 games last year, and their over-under win total is set at like 4.5 or 5. So what does that tell you? This team's not very good, and they got lucky in some situations last year. One of the best bowl games, though, that Western Kentucky Old Dominion game.
Because of the comeback,
about
though.
that game.
35-14. You give up and you lose 38-35. Like that's a way. I mean, what a stinger to leave in the offseason. Maybe they hung that on the big board throughout the year. What do you got? What is it? 4?
4.5 wins. You can get the over for
Yeah.
plus 100.
Yeah.
All right. So Vegas really doesn't think this team's getting to 5.
No.
Well, that is what it is. I guess look forward to take a step forward, Old Dominion. Get to 5, prove everybody wrong, and cash out your bet. But all right, that's the Monarchs. Let's move back up the list. I believe we're on our last one. Am I wrong, Jake? Or no? We're on our last team.
Let's talk last 2.
Oh, yeah, that's
JP's
right.
got one
JP
more.
has one more. That's right.
But I'll take
One
us
more,
through
Joe
one
wouldn't.
But yeah,
Yep.
you're taking us through South Alabama. This is a team that you were very high on last year. Tell us about them this year.
Yeah, kind of similar to a lot of these schools are just going through similar situations. It's an unprecedented time, especially to be a G5 program in college football right now. Head coach Kane Womack is replaced by Major Applewhite. Kane Womack takes a head coaching job at South Alabama and is now the defensive coordinator for Kalen DeBoer at Alabama this year. Just these guys just don't want to be the head coaches of these programs anymore, and I don't necessarily blame them. But who is Major Applewhite? He was their offensive coordinator for a couple of years, and he was actually the head coach at Houston from 2016 to 2018. I don't remember that at all, and looking it up, his time there wasn't great. There's a reason he only lasted 3 seasons. So what can he do at South Alabama? We'll have to wait and see. They have a quarterback. Gio Lopez will be the starter. He was in 5 games last year after Carter Bradley went down, and he actually played in the bowl game and was the bowl game MVP. So I think they got a decent guy to kind of build their season around this year at quarterback. They're the best receiver last year. Colin Lacey had 1,300 yards, was an absolute beast in the Sun Belt. He's transferring to Louisville. Great pickup for Jeff Brom, of course. He finds guys through the portal like he always does. But the brothers Jaden and Devin Voisin, these are probably going to be 2 of the most important players on this South Alabama roster. One plays offense, one plays defense. Jaden, he's a first-team all-conference safety in 2023. I think he's one of the best defensive players in the conference. He's going to be a stud for them. And then Devin was one of their top receivers a couple of years ago, got injured in 2023, but he caught 64 passes in 2022. I expect him to be wide receiver 1. So kind of an interesting little nugget there for your South Alabama. And last year, defensively, when you think of South Alabama, kind of like Troy with John Summerall, they're always really good on defense. They were 15th in total defense last season, but according to Bill Connolly's SP Plus, they only are ranking 81st in returning production on the defensive side of the ball. So the question is, can Will Whittam, the new defensive coordinator, can he replicate kind of what Womack had in place? Obviously, he goes to Alabama because of how good he is at calling plays on defense. They're going to miss that part of him. So can the new defensive coordinator get it done? I don't really care what happens offensively. I think you have a decent quarterback. I think defense is going to be the most important thing for your team this year if you're a South Alabama fan.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's a team that we look at even last year. And I remember your preview last year, how high you were on them. I think we went back and forth on who was going to win, and I had Troy. But this is a team that went and just dismantled Oklahoma State, who played in December in the Big 12 championship game. On the road did that. So you know that they have opportunities on your schedule to make a little bit of noise. And it's a team that I wouldn't want Nebraska. They used to play them, and Nebraska actually got beat by them one year. But it's a team that I do not want to see on Nebraska's schedule. So I look forward to watching South Alabama this year. And I believe we have one more. It's a JP clip, and it is Georgia Southern. He's going to close us out with Georgia Southern. So let's roll it.
Are a program that would really love to get back to the top end of the Sun Belt. They love to rekindle that success they had in the FCS. They are no longer that triple option team that kind of made the transition from FCS to FBS. They are a team that likes to air it out. As you can see, with the 62% of the time they were throwing the football a season ago, you can remember times where they were throwing the football all over the place. Sorry, Parks on Nebraska, for instance. They did it last year as well. I mean, they put up numbers on teams like Ball State, beat them 40-3. They put up 49 on UAB a season ago, 38 on Coastal, 44 on Georgia State. I mean, this team started out really good and then lost their final 6 games. They don't want to have that happen again. Clay Helton is just trying to keep this thing at the 500 mark and then make a jump, because this is a program that is kind of in a tough division. You look at the Sun Belt East, it's not easy to win the Sun Belt East. There's a lot of really good programs and really good football teams in that, year in and year out. When you're looking at Clay Helton and what he has to work with right now at quarterback, this is going to go into fall probably as a quarterback competition. Not 2, but 3 guys, maybe even 4, have a shot at winning this thing. We'll start with Dexter Williams, an Indiana transfer. I'm not really sure if he's the favorite to win this job right now. It kind of feels like he's the most talented out of the group, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's set and best fit for the job. JC French got snaps last year as the backup, and David Dallas as well. Those are 3 guys to pay attention to. It sounds like Helton's going to go into fall camp with that quarterback battle still open. This is a team where they're going to have really good receivers. I mean, the amount of time they throw the football, in order to scheme a guy open at 62 in all of your pass plays, it's going to have to be an incredible scheme. I think they'll need some really elite pass catches as well. And they found themselves in a good spot when they landed a tight end transfer in Tyler Fromm from Auburn. This is a guy who was a 4-star recruit formerly. He had some good receptions at Auburn.
Jake Fromm's little brother.
Kind of found a better fit. Maybe thought he was due for a little more touches. So he came to Georgia Southern. I think he's going to be a huge outlet for this offense and a really good piece to be relied on. Also defensively, like when you're looking at the defense, they really bailed themselves out last year with turnovers. You cannot predict turnovers to roll over into the next year. A lot of times defenses can be good, will create turnovers, but turnovers aren't guaranteed on good defenses, right? So that's a lot of things you need to pay attention to. The DBs will be pretty solid, but most of these guys on defense are unproven, and you're not really sure what to think of them. So where can you kind of get a step forward, right? I would think it'd be in the front 7 with the defensive line, your linebacking core as well. But the DBs need to find ways to continue to create turnovers on that side of the things. You're going to turn the ball over. I think they kind of talk about how just on different sites, how much they throw the football, you're due for mistakes, but limiting those mistakes and then making sure you're still living even on the turnover margin is a huge thing. So maybe they play a little more of aggressive style on that. So sitting in the Sun Belt East, I think they're predicted around 5th or 6th. The current win total sitting at 5.5. I don't think the schedule necessarily does them any favors. Looking here, they got Boise State, Nevada, first 2 weeks. We're just going to call that 1-1. Or Ole Miss is on here. There's going to be a lot of tough games. I think one that'll really tell you where this team sits and kind of how they're feeling on everything is Georgia State and James Madison. So those are going to be late September, mid-October games for the Eagles. It'd be a ton of fun to watch this team get back to winning a lot of football games. But I think we're a year or 2 out for Clay Helton, but I do think he's in the right track. So that's your Georgia Southern Eagles for 2024.
We give the kid one time to go on a clip, and Nebraska catches a stray. I mean, that was 2 years ago, Jordan. We're a new team. I erased that from my memory.
I was going to throw in another
59 points.
It's not on purpose, but I do need to mention it. Nebraska and Georgia Southern led the country in turnovers last year offensively. With 30.
That's fine. You can put that on blast.
So he didn't mention that, and he mentioned they throw a lot of picks, but he did not mention they led the entire country in turnovers. So that's got to change this year.
Right next to us, yeah. What do you know? We find him again. But no, that was a good one because Georgia Southern is a high flying offense. Like it is legitimately fun to watch. I was at that debacle in Memorial Stadium. I mean, Kyle Van Treese, it was a debacle because we couldn't stop scoring either. I think the final score ended up being 42-38 or something like that. Like it was not great, but they can throw the ball and their schemes work well. And I thought that was going to launch them into a Sun Belt title that year. It unfortunately didn't. It would have made me feel a little bit better, I guess. But that was a good preview overall. All right, that's it for individual team by team looks in 2024. Let's go to the grand scheme of things. We got to talk conference championship game. Let's lead it off with Jake. Jake, give me the 2 teams you got making it and who you got winning it.
Yeah, I kind of previewed it a little bit before. It's got to be Texas State and App State for me. I try to stay away from chalk, but I really want this game to happen more so than it might actually happen because I think App State's division's loaded. But I got to see Texas State. I got to see Jordan McLeod versus Joey Aguilar, just 2 guys that are the best quarterbacks in this conference, dueling it out for a Sun Belt title.
Yeah, give me that too. I'm going to jump right on the back of yours, but who do you have winning it? Did you say?
Oh, sorry. No, I'm going to go App State just because defensively they're going to be better than Texas State is right now, unless Texas State proves something or changes something up in this year. But right now, I know what I have with App State's defense.
Fair enough. I'm going to take the exact same game. However, I'm going to take Texas State. I think Jordan McLeod, if you're going to find a player within this conference that can rise to the occasion, play on the stage, and get that season-defining win, it's going to be him. So give me Texas State to beat App State in the Sun Belt title this year. And what a fun game that is. Like, I can't wait. I hope that that's the matchup because that would be just must-see television. Reese, your conference championship game and your conference champion.
Yeah, we're all going chalk. I'm piggybacking right off of you. I'm going to have the exact same game. I'm going to have the exact same champion. And for the same reason, I think
Who's you? Me?
Yeah, with you.
Let's go,
guys.
Texas State, give me Texas State. I think you go get the 2023 Player of the Year. Good offense usually beats good defense, I think, especially when you get a guy like of his caliber with that coach with the brain power he has. I just think that offense is going to be more. I think with the West too, there's a little more tougher games for them versus App State. You don't really have as much in there. Like the East is kind of more mid, I think, compared to the West this year. So give me Texas State in that game.
All right, there it is. There's our picks. JP did send his in, so I will try and make this as hype as possible. But however, I can't do it much justice because his championship game, believe it or not, is Appalachian State and Texas State. And his champion is App State. So JP and Jake versus me and Reese. Yep.
Something to know, though, is App James Madison travels to App the second last week of the year. You got to imagine that's going to be for the East title. Awesome game there as well. Yeah,
that would be. God, there's going to be a few good games in this year because the divisions at the top on both sides have some really good teams. But that is his champion. He is App State, so it's a 2-2 split. We'll graphic that for sure because that's going to be a fun one. But that is your conference championship game picks and predictions for this year. Let's go to players to watch. Let's talk to Reese first. Reese, give us your player to watch, where he plays, and why he should be on your watch list.
So a guy, I covered this team, I didn't mention before, trying to save him for this, but a guy by the name of Kai Poole, he's going to be a wide receiver for James Madison this year. Comes in from Mississippi State. He's 6'3", 210 pounds. He's a big dude. You see why he was an SEC caliber recruit right there. Didn't play much for Mississippi State. We're going to bring him in to go along with Elijah Surratt, who was their top receiver from last year, who had over 1,100 yards because they lost the number 2 guy. He declared for the draft and graduated. So he's going to be a guy who, if James Madison is going to be a team in the East to kind of play spoiler for that App State, who everybody loves right now, he's going to be a guy who's going to be a big part of that offense.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And anytime you bring in somebody who got recruited to an SEC school into a Sun Belt Conference team that you know is going to throw it around a little bit, he's going to have opportunities to make plays. So that's a good name there. Jake, what do you got on a player to watch this year?
Caden Robinson, wide receiver at App State. We talk about Aguilar all the time. This is a guy who had 900 yards last year. I look for him to cross the 1,000-yard mark, which every receiver returning in 2024 did not have 1,000 yards. There's not a single 1,000-yard receiver in this conference from 2023. Thought that was interesting too.
That is incredibly interesting. I did not know that, especially with the way, God, even Georgia Southern, I think they had that one kid.
Well, yeah, but a lot of them left. Like the Lacey kid from South Alabama, he had 1,300 yards, went to Louisville. So either graduated or just left the conference in general.
Wow. That's crazy, especially for the amount of times that these teams throw the ball. But all right, that's a good one. I'll give you mine. JP, we don't have one unless he's in the comments somewhere and he can throw his player to watch out and I don't know, maybe comment why. But mine is on the defensive side of the ball with App State. It might go a little against my Texas State pick in the Sun Belt Championship, but give me defensive back. Yeah, they wish. Ethan Johnson, he's returning cornerback for App State, second team all Sun Belt last year, posted 56 tackles, 42 of them solo, 11 pass breakups, and 4 tackles for loss. He's a 77 cover grade. If you're one of those guys, he's a 77 cover grade by PFF. And he's got a chance to make a first team this year in the Sun Belt. And I do think he'll make some noise in some big games. It's not a guy you're going to see get thrown in his direction often. He's a really good player. So definitely some draft potential there as well. That is our players to watch in 2024. JP did drop this, however. We asked him if there is a surprise team who he thinks could come out of one of these divisions and win the Sun Belt, and it wouldn't genuinely shock him, but it would surprise the world. And he said Arkansas State. He went into it in his preview and obviously highlighted a lot of offensive players for them and why they could be good. But I don't know what you guys think. Do you guys really think that there's going to be a surprise here? Or do you really think, I mean, we all had chalk, so is it going to be the 1-2 show?
I had App down as a surprise team just in the fact that I don't think all the Sun Belt teams in general, but I don't think there's really App has been showing a lot of love for this G5 spot in the playoff. I guess that's where I'm going for my surprise. But you look at their roster top to bottom, I think this could surprise some people. And they play, like I said this before, they play Liberty. Like it's a big deal. They get them at home. That's the team that's picking everybody's for that spot. And they have to go to Boone and come out with a win.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think App State would be like a fan favorite to grab that bid. I don't think there's a real loss there. Like if you get Boise State in there and or App State, like nobody's going to be hating on that. Like those are two pretty well-liked G5
big
programs.
de facto teams. Big
yeah,
de facto
for sure.
G5 schools.
What do you got, Reese? Do you think there's any surprise teams that could come out of this?
I mean, when you say surprising to me, like I think it would be like a brand name like Arkansas State where you don't know it as well, but like the other teams that aren't as well. I mean, Texas State isn't as well known, but they become better in most recent history. But like a James Madison, a Louisiana Lafayette, your App State, like those are kind of more household names, I feel like. So it wouldn't be, if someone was going to come out, it wouldn't be that shocking. It's going to be one of those teams the normal guy's going to recognize those names. I don't think you're going to have, your Southern Miss, your Southern Alabama. I don't think you're going to get like those teams that are kind of come out of nowhere to take this thing away.
And it may not be a preseason surprise because of everything that's everybody said. Obviously, I talked about how many question marks, but like, can you call it a shock if the team who's won the league twice in a row comes out of nowhere and is in the conference championship game? Like, I don't know. Can you call that a surprise? I mean, obviously they have some question marks, but we're talking about the back-to-back champion here. So maybe Troy makes some noise. I don't know. If I had to pick one, that's who I'm riding with because they've just taken it to this conference the last couple of years. But all right, that's everything. Any finishing touches on tonight's episode before I talk about a little fun announcement from our friends over at No Rivals?
Anybody have a hot take?
I don't have a hot
take.
I
for
have no hot
disappointing
take.
team.
Oh, a disappointing team.
No.
ULM's probably going to disappoint us once again, probably, right?
I don't think. I mean,
what's disappoint us by being good?
One win. They're not going to get to two.
I was going to say, like, it goes kind of maybe hand in hand with disappointing team and hot take. Is it a hot take to say this is going to be Butch Jones's last year coaching Arkansas State?
Dude, I wanted to bring that up when you talked about him earlier, right after JP went through the preview. But like, I automatically think of that clip of him last year, just like on the ground in Norman, just like sweating.
Here's the good news for him. They don't open up with Oklahoma to start this year.
Oh my God,
they do travel to Ames, so maybe I'll bring the Fire Butch Jones signs there. Hey, we're not going anywhere. They're coming to Ames. It's not happening. They're not beating us. I like the
careful
Raider
talking
kid,
shit.
but defensively, they were terrible last year. They gave up 80% of their teams are 80% on converting in the red zone for touchdowns. They gave up 30 points a game. I don't think they're good. He's 11-26 in his 3 years there. And I mean, there's not much talk in the magazines or anything about him being on the hot seat. But I'm going to put him there. I think that this could be his last. If they don't make a bowl game, I would fire him. I would fire him.
You got to probably think about it. I mean, you're Arkansas State. You're picked second in your division. Like you should probably get to six. It's not.
Arkansas State's a decently funded G5 school. They've got a good facility. By the way, super excited. The Waterfalls are in College Football 25. Saw them in the preview today. Awesome. So I don't really think there's much excuse. Like Rayner's a good quarterback. You got to find me 6 wins, especially when people, they're projecting this team to be the second best team in that West division.
Yeah. I mean, you got to think that they're going to be up there.
But they have at Michigan and at Iowa State. That's yikes. They got to get through the month of September healthy.
The big house and the little house. What do you know? Let's see if they can
big house and mid house.
No, it's not the mid house. Dude, since Jack Trice closed in the
I think we're top 5 in capacity for Big 12 stadiums. I think we're like 3 or 4.
I know, but you got to give those American teams a chance to build their corners of their end zone, and then all of a sudden it's pretty even. But all right, that's it on the Sun Belt Conference.